have Councilmember Harry Thomas and Councilmember Lane Carter. Behind me, we have Chief Frank Carter and Chief Brian Dunn. We also have with us Assistant Chief Patrick Brody with the Fire Department and Assistant Chiefs Tracy Fincher
Waiting for Lucy. Please take a seat. We'll get started in just 30 seconds. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the City Council meeting of October 20th, 2020. The meeting is now called to order, and we will start this morning with the chaplain prayer and our pledges. They will be led by Gary and Marcella Jenkins. So please come forward and join us, and we will join you in prayer.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Let us pray. Eternal God, I pray for our mayor, the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled council. I pray that you bless us in this meeting and keep us. Lord, make your face shine on us and be gracious to us. I pray that we feel your presence during this meeting because you are with us wherever we go. I pray that this meeting focus upon you and your plans for us as a body of believers. Also, Almighty and merciful God, Father, who show your love to all your creation, we come before you asking for a quick control of the coronavirus currently raging our world. Hear graciously the prayers we make for those affected by the virus in various parts of the world. Grant healing to the sick, eternal life to the dead, and consolation to the bereaved families. We pray that an effective medicine to combat the sickness be speedily found. We pray for the appropriate governments and health authorities that they take the necessary steps for the good of the people. Help us to rebuild our world together, creating foundations of justice with equality and peace for all. Look upon us in your mercy and forgive us of our shortcomings. Amen. the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I understand this flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
This morning, we have a proclamation of October 23 through 31 as Red Ribbon Week. Do we have people in the audience today? Please come forward. Substance use disorder is particularly damaging to one of our most valuable resources, our children, and is a contributing factor in the 3 leading causes of death for teenagers: accidents, homicides, and suicides. It is imperative that visible, unified prevention education efforts by community members be launched to eliminate the demand for drugs. It is the goal of Red Ribbon Week to involve families, schools, businesses, churches, law enforcement agencies, and service organizations in all aspects of this campaign, and to establish an atmosphere that supports awareness, education, and ongoing initiatives to prevent illegal drug use. The Red Ribbon Week campaign theme promotes family and individual responsibilities for living healthy, drug-free lifestyles without illegal drugs or the illegal use of legal drugs. The 17th Training Wing Drug Demand Reduction Office of Goodfellow Air Force Base and the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council for the Concho Valley are asking the residents of the city of San Angelo to observe Red Ribbon Week, October 23 through 31 of 2020. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October 23rd through October 31st, 2020 as Red Ribbon Week 2020 in San Angelo, Texas, and call upon all residents and organizations in the City of San Angelo to support the 2020 theme, Be Happy, Be Brave, Be Drug-Free, and increase drug awareness and prevention efforts in our community.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Flores, and I am with the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council for the Concho Valley. This year looks different, but we were happy to collaborate and partner with the Goodfellow Air Force Base in proclaiming this week as Red Ribbon Week. And so we wanted to give some data. So the CDC found and estimated that alcohol can factor into the deaths of over 4,000 youths under the age of 21. So that, along with other substances, is very alarming, and the reason that we work with the community to educate on the dangers of underage drinking and of other substance use disorders. So stay tuned. We will also be having an in-person proclamation this Friday at 1 at the ADAC office, and we will be having a representative from Goodfellow Air Force Base to speak on behalf to the TLCA students, 5th and 6th grade, that we will have as representatives for the youth in our community. Thank you.
We will now move into the public comment section of the City Council meeting. If you are going to come forward and offer public comment, please state your name and address or SMD area. Each citizen can speak just once per item unless asked to comment by council. Public comment should be 3 minutes unless extended by counsel or translation services. Proponent or opponent, 5 minutes unless extended by counsel or translation services. Council has no obligation to respond to comments or questions from the public. Any response from a member of the City Council to non-agenda comments is limited to a statement of specific factual information, recitation of existing policy, and directing staff to place a subject on a future agenda. Do I have anyone in the audience who would like to offer public comment today? If not, then I have a few public comments to make today. I know that council and many of you in the audience, something just happened, have been concerned that the city of San Angelo is wasting money on these sidewalks on Bryant Boulevard and Knickerbocker, so I wanted to offer some comment in regards to that. This is from the TxDOT office. The current sidewalk project on Knickerbocker Road and Bryant Boulevard is under contract to TxDOT. It was contracted in August 2019 to FNH Construction, LLC, at an amount of $4,491,789. This federal state funding distribution for this project is 80-20. It is focused on alleviating the ramps to nowhere, appearance of current pedestrian facilities, providing a safe ADA and TDLR compliant connection among these major arteries. The funding for this job is derived from statewide curb ramp sidewalk program issued competitively to TxDOT districts specifically for this type of work, and is focused on closing gaps in connectivity created by earlier sidewalk ramp construction and state highway right-of-way to bring us into compliance with ADA and TDLR requirements. As such, this funding is above and beyond what is available to the San Angelo MPO, which we call Category 2 of the San Angelo District, and helps offset the burden on our discretionary funding sources. Just to repeat, the funding for those sidewalks does not come out of a budget of the City of San Angelo and has not impacted our ability to do any other street projects. We also have heard many comments from people in regards to other projects, street projects, and I'm going to read some comments from Shane Kelton that were written to a person who had great concerns about how we are spending our money for our streets. In 2014, the city engaged Fugro Roadway to survey every city-owned street in San Angelo to determine each individual road segment's index score, and then provide an unbiased maintenance, rehabilitation, and reconstruction schedule based off the road's index score, class rating, and proposed available funding. In 2015, the study was completed and a prioritized list of projects was presented to the City Council for their consideration and funding. The City Council then authorized an $80 million bond funding program that would span a 10-year period. This bond funding equates to $16 million every other year for the 10-year period. Based on the available rehabilitation reconstruction funding schedule mentioned above, Fugro provided the prioritized list broken out in achievable projects based on an engineer's opinion of probable cost. While city staff realizes that some roads, and in particular certain road segments, can seem to be worse than other roads that are currently being worked on, funding limitations dictate how roadways are placed into the rehabilitation reconstruction queue. No city council or mayor has had or will have the ability to change the prioritization as presented by Fugro. The downtown Chadbourne project is only partially funded by the bond funding assigned to the aforementioned program. The roadway costs for this project coincided with other projects in the prioritized queue, balancing available funding with prioritized projects. With this specific project, the majority of the available monies are coming from other funding mechanisms tied to specific corridor revitalization and economic development areas that cannot be utilized elsewhere throughout the city. Another portion of this project is addressing the water and sewer infrastructure along this corridor. This corridor being the oldest part of the city, most underground utilities have reached the end of their useful lifespan. This specific project was also time sensitive if the city was to capitalize on federal and state funding opportunities that allow the city to start addressing pedestrian issues associated with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Southwest Drive and College Hills Boulevard are both in need of significant rehabilitation and reconstruction. Again, based on prioritization and available funding, both of these projects are currently being worked on. Southwest Drive is currently at 100% design and will go to bid the next month with an expected construction date in March or April of 2021. College Hills Boulevard is currently at the 60% design level and is expected to go to bid late in 2021 or early 2022 with a projected start date of late spring or early summer of 2022. The College Hills project is significantly more challenging and costly due to drainage issues and may be delayed a little longer than currently expected if funding for the drainage portion of the project cannot be identified between now and the time the designs are completed. Current engineers' opinions of probable cost for both Southwest Drive and College Hills Boulevard are $5,429,200 and $26,750,000 respectively. As an aside, College Hills Boulevard from Loop 306 to Valley View was one of the very first road segments rehabilitated in this program. So for those of you who have further questions or comments, please let us know, but that's sort of an overview of many of the questions that have been presented to City Council members over the past few months. Thank you. With that, we will move into our consent agenda.
Mayor?
Yes,
May I
ma'am.
have a public comment, please?
Oh, please, Billy, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just want to commend our water utilities group for the excellent, outstanding work that was done by city employees dealing with the 4 water main breaks. I have gotten several emails and next door neighbor information about how the city responded and how appreciative they were and how effective the communication was that went out from our water utilities department. So I know it involved a lot of people doing a lot of work, and I read one account that at 4 a.m. in the morning, some of our water utility staff was driving around town seeing what the progress was. And to me, that's real dedication. And many times it seems that we fail to appreciate those that are doing the work while we're sleeping or resting or doing whatever we do at 4 a.m. in the morning. And I just want to say thank you to all of those that were involved in getting those repairs done and getting the communication out on the boil water notices, and then the quick response and how we were able to get the water up and running again in our city. Because in my adult lifetime, I don't ever remember there being 4 major breaks at the same time. And so that had to be the ultimate challenge. So thank you to all of the city employees who worked so diligently to get that all done.
Thank you, Billy, for those comments. Well said. We will now move into the consent agenda. I'm going to start with Tommy Hebert and ask if he has anything he'd like to pull from the consent agenda. Tom?
Ma'am.
Harry? Lucy? Lane? Billy?
I'd like to pull item F.
With item F having been pulled, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item F. May I have that motion?
So moved,
Gary
Mayor.
Thomas.
I have a motion and a second by Harry Thomas. We'll take a vote. Well, Is there any public comment on any of the consent agenda items? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With no nays, consent agenda with the exception of item F has been approved. Item F is consider awarding the FS-05-20 equipment leasing to U.S. Bancorp Government Leasing and Finance Incorporated and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents. Ryan, you're on.
Good morning, Ryan. You and I had pretty lengthy conversation yesterday, and I certainly do appreciate you taking the time to walk me through some of this. You know, when the mayor was talking earlier and reading some public comments, I think our city population is interested when we spend a lot of money. And I was reading the background information. This lease is like $2.5 million. And I wish you would give us an overview of the benefit to the city in doing this lease all at once instead of buying the equipment piecemeal and, you know, what is required of that. If you could just give us an overview, I'd appreciate the benefit to the city.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. So there's a few very common things that we run into, one of which is we need to replace our equipment regularly. And this opportunity gives us, the lease opportunity gives us the chance to replace the equipment that is extremely high dollar in a group that makes sense to us as far as replacement goes. And so we do that because we have great financial benefit due to the leasing terms offered, the interest rates, et cetera. And we do that because the trade-in values that we have to resell that equipment is very high right now. So if we continue to run the equipment that we have, it would depreciate continually, as most equipment does. And so taking that opportunity to find the value in it now before it depreciates further adds to that effect. The third aspect is that we want to always keep our operators in equipment that functions well and is in service. So knowing that this equipment is used for things like water leak repairs, for potholes, for park restorations and improvements, for lake operations functions, for drainage controls. All of those things are extremely critical to our operations, and so we want to make sure that the equipment that those folks are operating meets the needs every day that they use it.
So, Ryan, is there a difference between the process for a leased car versus the lease we're talking about here? Because I know when you lease a car, at the end of the lease period, there's like a balloon payment that has to be made. So is this similar or is this different?
Yes, ma'am. So this option, depending on what's negotiated with the vendor, if approved by council today, we'll negotiate that process. And we would have the option for a balloon payment, but traditionally we do something like a dollar buyout, where it is a balloon payment. It's just very, very small. Or we have a final payment that is our payment. So at the end of this lease term, we will actually own the equipment. So it's not something that the equipment has to go back and then we have to do the process again in the sense that we're losing the equipment. This process is more like when you buy a car from a bank and you're financing it, and at the end of the term, you own the unit.
Okay. And you mentioned a low interest rate right now. Is that due to what's going on with the COVID pandemic, or why is the interest rate so favorable right now?
Yes, ma'am. I don't suppose I could speak to that directly. I'm sure no economist, but I do know that what was offered to us by multiple vendors is extremely low, which makes it more attractive to take advantage of.
Thank you.
Billy, would you like to make a motion for
No
approval
other
then?
questions? Yes, I'd like to make the motion to approve item F on the consent agenda.
May I
Thank
have
you,
a
Ryan.
second? A second by Lucy. Is there any public comment to be offered on this item? There is none, so we will take a vote. All in favor of approving item F on the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, F is passed. With that, we will move into our regular agenda. Item A is presentation of the Downtown San Angelo, Inc. biannual report, and Del Velasquez, the executive director, is here to present that.
Thank you. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so our presentation today is on here, right? From January of 2020 through September of 2020, we're trying to catch up here as far as our presentation to City Council. We have 15 new businesses that came online this year in downtown San Angelo, which is extraordinary under the conditions that we've been operating under with the COVID situation. And here are some of the businesses and where they're located and what kind of services they're providing. So those are 15, and we have 4 that we know are ready to open or are going to be ready to open by the end of 2020. So that'll give us a pretty good number of businesses that we are that are supporting our downtown effort. I wanted to give you a breakdown of what the categories of those businesses are. Our largest is at 31%, and that's retail. And then we had 28% of professional services, and that can be anything from
Hair salons.
engineering. I'm sorry?
Hair salons.
Actually, hair salons are personal services, and we're at 9%. 16% professional services can be anything else other than salons and fitness centers. We have 9% of those, which is significant for our downtown. 16% are restaurants and entertainment venues. 7% are legal services, such as title companies, law firms, and Bell's Bonds. 4% are art galleries, and 2% make up lodging. So that's a little bit of a breakdown in terms of our demographics of types of businesses we have in downtown. For our total reinvestment, which this number's in here for $3,555,590, that's how much has been reinvested in terms of rehabs and also property purchases or sale of property. Our total reinvestment from 2007 to now is $239,105,229. As far as our sales tax and mixed beverage sales report, doing a comparison from last year to this year, through this year, and we have been off, but not sales tax wise, but certainly on the mixed beverage, and for the obvious reasons because of the venues and bars being shut down. So we've had a significant impact change both in the Central Business District and in the Main Street District. You can see the significant numbers there, lower numbers. Here are some examples of some of the work that's been happening in downtown. We have a Kaplan Ice Center at 112 West Concho, Bricks Winery. They recently moved from one suite to another. This store location at 113 East Concho, Suite 130 was vacant. It's now a boutique. We had a Lighting and Beyond company there at 2020B North Chadbourn. It's now a Vita Hair Salon. We had a vacant building that became a little bit of SAS, which is a retail outlet. The Hamptons Mercantile has become the Grind and Brew. This empty space was the old firehouse, the old Central Firehouse. Today it's the old Central Firehouse Pizzeria and Tap Room. This place, this location, 109 North Chadbourn, used to be an antique store. It's in progress right now to become the Concho venue. The Little Red Rooster has been redone. It's now called 211. It's a private venue at 211 North Chadbourn, and you can tell the significance difference in the facade, and the interior is awesome. 123 North Chadbourn, I always call this the ugliest building in downtown San Angelo. is being worked on today. It's in progress, and that will be the Buffalo Art Gallery. The Memory Vault is a new business that just established in downtown. It's a photography studio, selfie. And then 19 West Beauregard is in the process of being rehabbed, and it will become office space. And the real neat thing about this particular project is if you'll see that facade, that's going away. It's going back to its historic roots, and it's rock, and it is going to be quite an improvement to that property and to that block, going back to from a historic perspective. I wanted to cover some of the TIERS projects that have been implemented over this year. And by the way, in terms of total dollar projects awarded, we have given out $163,229.82. These are the projects that have received funding. 40 West Tuig, the Spur Building, which is going to be another real boost to our downtown addition because it is such a large property along with the parking garage that the city of San Angelo owns. Another property that has received some landscaping dollars was the San Angelo Autism Center. That building had been pretty much vacated for at least a decade, and now it's back in operation. The Buffalo Art Gallery, we talked about that. Already they received $70,000, and Reina's Taco Shop, which was formerly a little garage originally, gasoline station, is now a taco shop and doing really well. And last but not least, Twofold Journey received $39,872, and this project here is going to be a venue, and they do also plan to create some lofts in that facility or in that building. As far as our outreach, we continue to make as much noise as we can to promote downtown. We attend we attend ribbon cuttings for Keep San Angelo Beautiful. We've worked with the San Angelo Love team to promote our Downtown Strong and hashtag Downtown Strong campaign, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then we were constantly putting out information to all our businesses about the opportunities, especially the financial opportunities that exist both at the federal, state level during the COVID, which is still going on. Our sheep continue to grow. The flock continues to grow. Here are a few examples of some of the sheep that have been placed out in the public, and right now we have 7 other sheep that are in progress. Our marketing and promotions, our downtown stroll has taken a little bit of a hit because of COVID. We haven't been able to execute this particular program, but we came up with this idea, and we came up with hashtag Downtown Strong, hashtag Heart of the City. And on May 30th, and this was right after, if you'll remember back then, this was right after the bars were able to reopen after the initial shutdown. And we wanted to do this as far as making sure that all businesses in downtown were available and able to participate. So we waited until that time frame came, and we had a very successful event. One of the things that we did to promote this event was create a PSA, a public service announcement. And thanks to Fox and KLST KSAN, they promoted the commercial, and I'm hoping that we are ready to show it to you if you haven't seen it. know who the last person there was. Anyway, hashtag Downtown Strong. We're in the process of filming a new commercial that we're going to, or public service announcement, excuse me, that will be coming out here within pretty short time frame. We're working on the timing of it, but we're expanding the hashtag Downtown Strong campaign to a new logo or new slogan called Live, Love, and Shop Local. And we're going to extend this one over a longer period of time. This was a one-day event. The new campaign will extend over weeks, and we're going to highlight the different categories of businesses that make up downtown San Angelo, and I kind of gave you a little bit of a demographic on that a few minutes ago. We are continuing to promote our fiberglass sheep project, the Sheep Spectacular. Our magazine comes out twice a year, the historic Downtown San Angelo magazine. It's getting ready to come out, the new one. And then our newsletter, which we produce twice a year. We did receive a sign, by the way. If you can see it right here on the right-hand side, the sheet with the sign. That sign is going to be placed as soon as we are able to get our gateway done. And we're working on that. We're working on Shop Small currently. That's another project that that will be coming out later this month. And that concludes my presentation.
Do I have questions from council for Dale today? Thank you, Dale.
Thank you.
Good job, Dale.
We will now move into item B, discussion and consideration of an event at the airport and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute all related documents regarding 1, approving a venue and license agreement with Air Race 1, and 2, approving an MOU with the Convention and Visitors Bureau to provide funding and other related event services. Jeremy, you're on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Mayor, Council, and staff. It's good to be with you today. So I'm Jeremy Valgartson, representing the San Angelo Regional Airport, and I've got Ms. Susana Valenzuela with us, representing the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And Teresa hopefully will chime in and help us with our presentation today. But we were approached several months ago from this organization looking to do an air race in San Angelo. This organization is based out of Dubai. They do business with a Texas-based company who's actually based out of Midland. His aircraft are in Big Springs now, but he knows about San Angelo. He knows about West Texas and the open space we have and the good weather we have, so I thought we would be a good venue or a good hosting airport for their fall and winter season. So a little bit about the event. So Air Race 1, it's actually Air Race Events doing business as Air Race 1, as I said, is based out of Dubai. It's a Formula Air 1 racing event, and I just learned the other day that this Formula 1 air racing has been around for 100 years. It's a worldwide event. They've done races in Spain, Thailand, China. They have not done an official Series Cup in the United States. So they want to roll it out. They want us to be part of their first Series Cup as they enter the United States. They have raced 2 events in Nevada. They weren't full Cup Series. They were just, I guess, practice runs or something they've tagged on with the Reno Air Races. The race layout, they have anywhere between up to 8 aircraft. They all race together in an oval pattern, much like NASCAR. They stay 50 feet above the ground in the United States. If you go travel overseas and watch them, you'll see their wings nearly kiss the ground. So we're glad they keep them a little bit higher in the U.S. And they can reach speeds up to 300 miles an hour. The oval track, say it's roughly 1 mile. With our open space, we really can get about a 4 or a 5 mile track out of it from end to end. It'd be a 5-day event. 3 of those days is set up in training. They like to bring the aircraft here and they can get familiar with our density altitude and learn the performance of the airplane before they actually start racing. And then it's a 2-day race. Usually that last day is when you open it up to the public, and they have the final race on that last day. Here's the track. I mean, like I said, it's a very simple oval track. Where you see the red section there is where the spectators sit. So that final leg would be right in front of the viewers. Here's the track in San Angelo. Can you see that? Is it big enough?
It's
okay, good. This is the layout in San Angelo, and we've had our engineers look at this. The FAA's looked at it. We tried to figure out where we could put it, where we could continue to keep runway 1836, which is the parallel runway to the terminal. We continue to keep that runway open for use. Because we are a public use airport and we're federally obligated, we have to keep our runway open at all times. So American Airlines can still come in and land. We can still accept business traffic, GA traffic, and our tenants should not be impeded because of this event. So we think this is the best place to put the track that keeps it out of the imaginary Part 77 surfaces, which is airspace. And it also keeps most of the track on airport land, and it keeps all of the flying outside of general safety and public areas. The yellow, the inside yellow, is actually where the inner track is, and then the dotted yellow is the outer portion of the track, and the big red portion is what they call the debris zone. That's 250 feet of scatter. You can see that all the pylons, pylon number 3 is off property. That is not on airport property. Everything else sits right on airport property. The big red dots is a little bit of a concern, and we're running this through the FAA right now for approval. But the big red dots are critical infrastructure. We got glide slopes, landing systems for aircraft using the runway that crosses there, runway 3 and 21. There's some weather stations out there. There's some communication repeater stations, localizer, and then the big radar dome that sits out there for the weather center. And then the green line is power lines. The one green line that they're crossing there, that's a low power line. It's 17.5 feet high, and so they should be well above that. The other ones further to the south are a little bit higher, but we had to keep the debris zone out of that path. So you can see it's a really tight configuration. We may be able to shrink it a little bit or adjust it to the west or to the east if we needed to, but with the engineers and the FAA, this is the best track pattern we could come up with. Here's a little bit about their aircraft. They're very small, very lightweight. They're only about 1,000 pounds, and they run off 100 low lead fuel, which is the same type of fuel that all piston-driven airplanes use. So the FBOs do have that fuel. They will not have to bring fuel in. They are seeking hangar space. They're looking for a minimum of a 10,000 square foot hangar. Currently, I don't have any vacant hangars to put them in, so we may be requesting some tenants or asking tenants if they'd be willing to volunteer some hangar space, or we may have the opportunity to bring in some portable hangars. Risk versus reward. I mean, as an airport aviation enthusiast, we'd love to do something out at the airport for the public to come and see the airports. We thought it would be a good opportunity to get the public out. This, in my opinion, is a bit of a risky event because they have not raced in the United States as a full series. We just don't know. I mean, the organizer says the pilots are competent. They have to be vetted through the ICAO process, which is not the FAA. It's the international version of the FAA. But we don't know the pilots, their capabilities. We just trust that they are qualified to do this event. The activity is outside of normal airport use, so what does that mean? It's not covered under our general insurance. So we may have to, we're having a hard time finding anyone that can cover this event. If we were to do it and we can't find anybody, we're looking at self-insuring the event. The safety areas on the runway are not designated for such activity. When you do an air show, the air show really stays within the confinements of your safety areas. They call it the envelope or the box. These guys fly outside of that envelope in the box where the FAA no longer ensures their safety when they're flying outside of that area. As I said, there is some critical infrastructure directly beneath or within the oval track. It's very unlikely that anything would happen, but if there was a bird strike or an engine failure and they came down and did hit the landing system, it would put the instrument runway out of service for who knows how long until the FAA can get back out and put it back up. We may see a reduction in aircraft traffic during the event. This is military and business. When we put NOTAMs out, NOTAMs are notice to airmen. When we put NOTAMs out, letting pilots know that there is an event or something going on at the airport, the military usually will back off and just let the event happen so they're not in the middle of it and they don't cause any safety issues there. There's obviously a lot of reward. I mean, a public event at the airport is something I've been wanting to do since I've been here. I think this would be a good opportunity. Obviously, marketing, exposure, this would put us on the world map because it is a worldwide event. They would broadcast it through the internet. I think they have a YouTube channel. And then obviously the economic benefit, heads and beds, visitor dollars, sales tax revenue. And we may see an increase in GA traffic. Oftentimes the general aviation traffic will come in, park their airplanes, and spend 3 or 4 days at the airport and be part of the event. Here's some of our needs for the event. The organization says they need 4 pickup trucks where they can just put sleds in the back if they needed to get the pilots out. 2 structural fire trucks, 2 ground ambulances. We're looking for about 16 EMS and fire personnel to help with the actual flying portion of the event. Security, because we do have a security plan with TSA, they're requiring us to have 4 uniformed law enforcement officers anytime the gates are open and we're allowing the public to come into the airport. Volunteers, we always need a lot of volunteers when we do events like this. Civil Air Patrol, we had several organizations reach out to us and say we're willing to help, and Susanna will talk more about that. And then financial support, and the reason why this is in here is because we are federally obligated. We accept money from the FAA. On their revenue use policy, they say airport funds cannot be used to directly fund this event unless the event was to make monetary profit that goes directly back to the airport. The event also must be open to the public because it's basically a public park for the public. So that's my portion of it. I'll let Susanna get into a lot more fun stuff.
Before he goes, Mayor, I have
go
a
ahead,
question.
Billy.
Could you go back to your risk slide, please? That item 4, that there's critical infrastructure directly beneath or within that range. Does that involve human lives at all, or is it just strictly infrastructure?
It's strictly infrastructure.
Okay, so no risk to human lives on the ground, not in our air traffic control tower or public or anything.
And that's a good question. There are no building. The only building that would have anybody in it is, it would actually be kind of on you see the green circle, the dotted circle. Mm-hmm. On the outer portion of that dotted circle, we've got the FAA that has a facility out there. They usually keep 2 maintenance crew in there, but we could ask them to move because they have another office closer to the terminal. But other than that, all personnel reside outside of the red area.
Do I have other questions from council for Jeremy? Do you, Tommy?
I have some, Mayor.
Please.
Now's appropriate.
Yes.
Okay. Jeremy, I'm curious. You said one of the promoters or originators is from Midland?
Yeah, he's based out of Midland, but he actually lives in Big Springs.
So why come to San Angelo? Midland seems to me has more open space, even with less congestion, not air traffic congestion, but with respect to more vacant land, I guess you'd say. Not we have residences that are fairly close to this. So why here rather than Midland first? Do you know?
That's a good question. We do know that they want to roll out several races throughout the year. They're looking at California, Arizona, and Texas because of our vastness. So they very well may roll out in Midland. They haven't announced what other airports they're going to. I'm having a hard time with the FAA and the TSA getting the approval process because there's so many different reaches of the FAA. And the FAA won't approve anything until they come and do a site visit. And with COVID, that they're not allowed to travel. So they may be going down the same process with Midland. I don't know that answer.
So
Tommy, it's because when you compare Midland to San Angelo, the obvious pick is we're in much better city.
I knew that, Mayor. Jeremy, you mentioned in your memo that there's a significant financial requirement as well as insurance. What does significant mean?
I'll let Susanna get into that.
Okay. And you said we may have to self-insure this? So if we were going to purchase insurance, how much insurance would we purchase? $1 million, $2 million?
I believe we're looking at 10 million in the agreement.
That's correct, Tommy. The agreement right now is asking for 10 million. The problem is not the amount, but we can't find a Texas insurer who's willing to insure this kind of event. We're still looking, and we have a couple of trees we're shaking to try to find a name to get us the insurance. We have a couple of contacts we've been trying to get in contact with, but they're on vacation right now, so we haven't been able to reach them. But that is the difficulty, finding somebody who will insure this event.
Is our self-insurance fund able to handle a $10 million event?
Ask Charles to come for that exact question.
Council Charles Hagan, your risk manager. The fund that I balance with is a year-to-year fund, and to say that I have 10 million in that, I would not have that. That would require us to go into the finance and look beyond what I'm allowed to operate from year to year.
The answer is no. We don't have the ability to insure a $10 million event. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Jeremy, can you give any statistics on these events being held in other cities and the kinds of accidents or things that have happened or not happened?
For this particular event, they've had a few engine failures, but they've all been safe landings. They haven't had a loss of human life for this event. It is different than Reno. The Reno air races have had some issues, but these guys have not. And one thing I may say is I've reached out to Ely Airport because they have held this event, and I asked them how they insured it. The reason why they canceled their last event is because they couldn't find an insurance rider. But they did have success with the event. They had good public turnout. They didn't make any money, but they said they would have the event back if they could somehow find someone to carry the insurance.
And what is the targeted date for this? When would we be looking at?
We're looking at fall of 2021.
2021. So that would be enough time for the FAA to come in and do their assessment and everything?
I can't answer that.
Okay, because,
Yeah.
COVID does not seem to be going away, and if they can't travel, is that even feasible to, be looking at that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, we did put it into the contract that if we did not get approval from the FAA or TSA, we could terminate the contract at any point. So we're still just working with those agencies to try and get that approval.
Tommy, I don't know if you had an opportunity to ask all your questions.
I had one more, which
Okay.
is, I guess, maybe a Teresa question. You mentioned, go back, you mentioned something at the very beginning about how is Dubai tied into this?
So Air Race Events is the owner of that organization is based out of Dubai. He's an American citizen, but his business is in Dubai. He's partnered with Air Race One, who is based out of Texas, to do this event. But our agreement is with the Dubai organization, right?
So does that, Teresa, does that cause us any problems or cause you any heartburn to be doing with business with a sovereign government?
Yeah, it causes a little bit of heartburn. We've tried to address it the best that we could within the contract documents itself. They've consented to jurisdiction here in the United States and in Tom Green County. So that alleviates some of the concern. However, if they decide they're not going to abide by that provision, then it could be a problem. But this is, we discussed this at length with the gentleman from Midland, and, his argument is this is a company who wants to do business in the United States. And so they're not going to risk their reputation here by backing out on claims when they come up and failing to abide by those contract requirements.
So does that mean that what liability do they have as a business, as a LLC?
The liability question in this is pretty complicated. We are essentially acting just as the venue. So we're buying the insurance as the person who has the venue. But all the other entities are also going to have insurance. All of the pilots have insurance, and the other companies involved in this have insurance. And I'm assuming they're going to require anybody who is a sponsor will also have some sort of insurance if they have any active role. One of the contract provisions we've negotiated is that we've asked to be added as an additional insured on all of those insurance policies. So we have the protection of, our immunity as a governmental entity, the insurance requirements that we're trying to secure, the venue and jurisdiction agreement that we have with them, as well as being listed as additional insured on all those other insurance policies.
Tommy, any further
Just
questions?
To
Go
speak
ahead,
a little
Brian.
more to, I'm sorry, Brian Kendrick, HR Director, Risk Director. To speak more to Mr. Hebert's question, we have about $1.8 million fund balance in that risk fund.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. That's all for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Any other questions from council for Jeremy at this point, and we'll move on to the rest of the presentation. Okay. Thanks, Jeremy. Susanna?
Good morning, Susanna Valenzuela. I am the Leisure and Smurf Sales Manager at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and I have been working on this with Jeremy since about July, and he has been awesome to work with. I've learned a lot about the airport in these few months. So you were asking Councilman Hebert why San Angelo, and they actually sent out a request for proposal. I don't know how many cities they sent it out to, but we were one of the ones that responded. We are actually competing against a city in California, a city in Spain, and 3 other Texas cities. So they are looking at other locations, but they really enjoyed working with us, so they wanted to move forward. I don't know how to advance the slide. Sorry, I'm new. I don't know how to move this forward. Okay, the down button. Okay, here we go. So sorry. Okay, so as Jeremy explained, this event is similar to NASCAR, so the planes are racing simultaneously. They've laid out the course. We've had tons of meeting in these last few months with legal, fire, police, and so we feel like we're in a good place with the contract and all of the entities. This, Jeff Zaltman, who is the owner of this business, has been doing these races since 2014. He has not had any accidents in his events, and he's been hosting them in Thailand, and so they've been pretty successful so far. So there's another aspect to this event, and that would be the event side, ticket sales, any entertainment and things like that, and we're working with the chamber to see about them possibly hosting that side of the event. So that would really help this to be even more successful. We have been working out the details as far as the incentive costs. Normally, these events, when he hosts them, he charges $75,000 to $250,000 just to host it. And due to COVID, he's waiving that fee. So this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get something like this at a lower cost. And all of the incentives that we are doing will not be paid directly to Air Race 1. They will be paid out in this format. So we're looking at $20,000 for marketing, $10,000 for a VIP event, $4,000 for fuel. On the transportation, when I called to get the quote, Concho Valley Transit jumped in right away and said we want to be a sponsor, so there's no cost on that. Normally they ask you to pay for the flights for the pilots that are coming in or the staff, but we have worked out to just get them discounts. We're doing lodging at $20,000, lunch for the participants at $2,000, and then $14,000 for the EMS is what we're expecting, but we're hoping that we can partner with Goodfellow and have some savings on that. We've talked about the event insurance. That's the big thing that's kind of hanging out there. And then, of course, tents if we can't get a hangar. So we're kind of about $70,000, hopefully $80,000. We're hoping we can get the insurance at about $10,000, but I don't know how that's going to work. So the CVB Board of Directors has met and discussed this. They had an emergency meeting on October 9th. They have authorized us to proceed with $40,000, and then they've asked us to find the remainder of the funds through sponsorships. We're looking at asking the Texas Event Trust Fund for some help, and then last resort, very, very last resort, come back here and ask you guys for help. So that's kind of where we are at this point, if you have any questions.
What happens in year 2? Let's say we do it year 1, they discount or don't charge very many fees, it's successful, then here comes year 2, and all of a sudden they want $70,000 or $200,000.
This event is not guaranteed past year 1. So right now we're just looking at hosting this for 2021. There's no guarantees for past that.
Can you give us any statistics on other cities, what they have benefited from in terms of revenue?
Unfortunately, I don't have that information with me, but I can get it to you. They haven't held this event in the United States, so the numbers would be from Thailand. So I don't know how that would compare to here locally.
Does council have any questions for Susanna?
So
Tommy, do
Susanna,
you-
above and beyond what you detailed in the expenses, it looks to me like you're estimating the total expense roughly to be 70,000. Is that
Well,
what?
and that's not including the insurance. So yes, we've negotiated all of the costs that they originally requested, that they wanted as incentives. And, a lot of other cities that they have approached are in similar situations with the COVID stuff. Not everybody has a lot of funds to do these hosting fees. That's why they're waiving them. And, Mayor Gunner's been on a call with us with them. So they've really seen how excited we are at the possibility of hosting the event. The chamber hopping on board, of course, would be icing on the cake to really make it a grand event. So, yeah,
Okay.
we're hoping 70, probably 80. But we have been authorized to get the sponsorships, seek the funds, to get that additional help once we find out how much it is.
You think your board would likely approve more above and beyond the 40 if needed?
I'll let Diane come up.
Good morning, Diane Bays, Vice President of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. In answer to that question, we have 80,000 in a reserve for sports events funding incentives and visitor event incentives, and then we have an additional 80,000 in a separate budget for both of those things. So we have a total of 160,000. We're trying to hold some of that back just simply because we have other events that do come to us. That said, this has been a really rough year for our organization, for our industry. And so when this opportunity came forth, we were looking at something big to absolutely give us some exposure to the visitors, because our January through June of 2021 are going to be very, very slow. And so as we begin to open back up, hopefully have COVID go away, then we will have this opportunity. So I do believe our board would be open to that. And the funds are there. We're just trying to be a little more reserved with what we have.
Sure. Thank you, Diane. Jeremy, I have one more question that I don't think you answered. What is can you estimate the value of that infrastructure, those 3 dots, if any of that was either harmed or destroyed? What would be the value of that infrastructure out there?
My last airport, we did a lighting system alone, and it was 1.8 million. So I think the landing, the glide slope's going to run you about 3 or 4 million just in that one. That's that first dot as far to the west as you can get.
Okay, thanks.
Would their insurance cover any of the damage if there was damage?
A lot on the circumstances that led to the damage, and we were hoping that the pilot's insurance would cover that, or the event insurance would, but it would be definitely a legal conversation.
And Mayor, I did take this to my airport advisory board earlier in the month, and they had a lot of the same concerns Tommy did, but they did want to see an event. If it's not this event, they'd like to see an open house. Susanna's been great. She's been seeking volunteers. She's put a committee together that's done a lot of the work for us. They'd love to see an open house, an air show if we can afford it, or maybe just a long cross-country air race where we would not have to insure the event outside of our normal operating insurance.
Well, I think what we're asked to do today is to consider this event as an opportunity and ask you guys to continue to go forward and seek insurance and seek the answers from the FFA to see if this event can happen. So I think what we're going to ask today is for council to make a motion to approve moving forward and continue to get the information we need to understand whether it's feasible or not. Does that make sense for everyone? Okay. Yes, Tom?
Jeremy, and I've had multiple text and phone calls since it got announced, but I I've been to the Reno air races about 7, 8 times. It's kind of an annual pilgrimage I go to. I hadn't been the past couple of years, and then there was one year that they had the incident out there. I wasn't there, but I will say the state of Nevada and the city of Reno, other than gaming in Lake Tahoe, Reno has 2 very large economic impact events. One is their rodeo, and the other is their air races. It's at a different scale than what this is. There's multiple classes of airplanes, from the sports to the unlimiteds, but things like this generate a very unique crowd, and as far as economic impact on it, it wouldn't only be with this group. Air Race 1 would have to expand out and bring, there's lots of other people that play in this game, but I would just say I was very excited to see this come across. Tommy brings up very good points, and as the biggest issue is going to be here, the basic elements of insurance and protection on our part. But the potential for this thing is huge. Number one, because of our climate and where we are in the state of Texas, and pulling a lot of these racers, including Rod and Lewis, and some of them are out of San Antonio in that area. So yeah, I think it's really a good path we're following on this one.
Okay, thank you, Tom. All right, so, yes, Susanna?
Sorry, Mayor. We are actually looking for approval, or that we're moving towards approval, because they have to start marketing this event. A year out is not enough time almost. So he's looking for a commitment from us.
Yes, and I understand that, but we have still some unanswered questions. So I think the issue is council will vote one way or the other to support moving forward, but we also realize you don't have all the answers you need to make the council feel 100% confident that we can do it. So I think we are supportive of this event. We want to pursue this event, but I know that FAA hasn't approved it yet, and we still have an insurance question. So those are answers that you guys are going to have to provide.
We'll let him know that. I just wanted to make sure that y'all understood. He is wanting to know that we are kind of committed to move forward. You know, he's okay if we can't sign the contract immediately. He has shared with me that if we can get this contract signed, the event is ours. So don't tell anybody. So anyway, he is looking for a commitment from us that, so I don't know if we can word it somehow that way, that we are, you know, committed to move forward if we can get through those couple of issues.
Tom or Tommy, would one of you like to make a motion with?
Mayor?
Yes, Billy.
Before we make the motion, Teresa, based on what Susanna just said, are we talking about we would actually sign a contract?
It depends on your motion, but what I would recommend is approving a contract, both of these agreements. One's a contract with Air One Racing and the other's an MOU with the chamber related to all this funding they're going to secure, with the contingency that we secure insurance. And if we're unable to secure insurance, to bring it back for another discussion on whether or not we're willing to assume that risk ourselves.
That was my question.
Yes, we can approve it that way, and I think that, Susanna, don't you think that would be helpful? Because I think everybody's aware the insurance is an outstanding issue. He just wants to know if we get that resolved, we're going to move forward.
Yeah, if these caveats don't come through, are we held liable with the contract to carry through no matter what if we can't get the insurance, if we can't?
So I would like you to approve the agreement provided we're able to secure insurance. And then, as Jeremy said, that if we don't get the FAA approval, the contract itself says that nobody's at fault and everybody walks away. So
That's what we said earlier, that
Yeah,
those
and
are the
that's
things that
language.
are in the contract that says if these things can't be done, we're not liable. And what we want council to do is to make the motion that says we agree that that we approve you moving forward with this, but there are 2 issues that have to be resolved, and we realize that signing the contract does not make us liable if these 2 things cannot be achieved.
we won't even execute the contract if we can't find insurance.
So maybe I made that motion.
I'll second. I'll
Okay.
second that.
Because I couldn't repeat any of that.
Is it clear, the
It's not
motion
my head.
on the table? Okay. Is there any public comment today?
We're approving the concept to move forward.
Yeah, we're approving them to move forward on the contract with their ability to secure the FAA approval as well as the insurance. So they may move forward to negotiate on the contract and let him know we're moving forward on the contract, but those are the 2 things that have to be answered. And if they aren't answered, then we're not liable for anything in that contract.
Teresa, would that then imply with talking about approving it the way we are discussing, does that imply that our infrastructure would be insured or protected should something happen to our infrastructure out there? Okay.
That's the kind of insurance we're seeking.
Okay, all right.
To
Well,
protect
that's
our
what
insurance.
that's what I assumed, but to me, that's a really big issue that we've kind of glossed over a little bit. The value of that infrastructure is really what keeps Jeremy in business day in and day out. So
That's why Jeremy put that in red, I think,
Okay.
because that
Okay.
is his major concern when we've talked.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With no other public comment, we have a motion and we have a second. We'll take a vote from council. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0.
Mayor, if I could,
Yes.
big thanks to Susanna and the CVB and Jeremy for working on this. This could be very big, and I know they've had to jump through a lot of hoops, and big thank you for their work.
Thank you. Item C, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving case PD 20-02, a rezoning property from a planned development allowing retail sales and service uses and offices with type 1 outdoor storage to a planned development allowing multifamily housing development being 1.425 acres located at 3824 Green Meadow Road. And you're on, John.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. As you mentioned, this is a planned development. You may recall this in the last couple of years, this came to you to rezone for like an office use. That actually fell through, and so the new owner is now looking to take it back to a multifamily housing, actually a series of duplexes on this site, 14 buildings, so 28 units total. And so this is just an amendment to that PD to make that happen. It is in a commercially planned area in our comprehensive plan, and as I mentioned, it is currently a planned development district, and that is consistent. We did send out our notifications, did not receive any responses in favor or in opposition. Just a couple of pictures of the site. You can see to the left there, across the street from the site, are some single-family homes. That's a neighborhood. But back in the distance, you can see some apartments. So this road is kind of the transition from the single-family on that side of the road to more commercial and office and multifamily on the other side of the road. And you can see from that east picture more apartments as well as some commercial activity down the street. And then just the picture of the site itself, and then looking across the street. This is their site plan. Again, it's a series of duplex units that would be built in this area, as well as the parking and a little bit of green space. Staff does recommend approval. We think it's a transition, as I mentioned, from the single-family neighborhood over to the more commercial area. The lots would comply with the RM1 zoning. Really, the only reason this needs a PD is for some setback issues. Normally, the buildings would have to be set back from the property line, particularly the rear property line, but that's a drainage area to that side, and so this helps let them build out the side a little more because there's no other development that's going to be on that other side that this would impact. Multifamily was the zoning until just recently, from 1983 to 2019. And as you know, the housing study that was done shows that duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, that what we call the missing middle, that is a housing type that we have a shortage of. In fact, it's a shortage all over the country. We get single family, we get large apartment complexes. We don't get a lot of these middle kinds of housing, and so this would be a good project. As I mentioned, staff does recommend approval with 5 conditions, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval. Just real briefly, the conditions, as I mentioned, the setback reduction. It also applies multifamily parking to the site that's a little bit less than normal. Development in accordance with that concept plan that they showed, an urban design review that's normally required for apartments anyway, and then exterior lighting to make sure that there's not lighting that will shine into those homes across the street. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone on council have a question? Billy?
Thank you, Mayor. John, since that's in my district, I drove that property, and by the way, the rezoning sign is not there like it shows in the picture. I guess somebody either moved it or whatever. But two concerns I have. One is the drainage, which you mentioned, and it's mentioned in the background information, and the other is the impact on traffic. That's such a horrendous traffic area, and of course we'd be adding at least 56 more cars to the traffic there, and I'm not sure we can do anything about that. But the drainage, in the background information, it said a drainage study may be required. And since we have draining issues all over the city, what type of drainage issues do you potentially, think might occur in that area? Because it looked like the property layout is similar to where that next level went, and we had to go through, Shane had to go through some things to set some parameters on that. So would that be the same process that we would go through, or how would we deal with the drainage? Because that is an area that floods too.
Yeah, it would. They would have to go through the drainage plan and submit that to engineering for review to ensure that they're not negatively impacting the drainage downstream from them. Now, I suspect that because of the drainage facility behind it, that they'll design it just to drain right into that drainage ditch, so it shouldn't create any problems. But they will have to do a drainage plan to show that how they are going to address the drainage from the new construction on the site.
All right. Well, that was my primary concern, Mayor, and I would make a motion to approve this rezoning.
Thank you, Billy. Do I have a second? A second by Tommy. Any public comment in regards to this item? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. Item D, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving case CP 20-06, a comprehensive plan amendment from neighborhood to neighborhood center, being 0.553 acres located at the northwest corner of South Bell Street and Paint Rock Road. John?
Thank you. As you mentioned, this is not a rezoning, but it is just an amendment to the comprehensive plan. Because of what's being proposed there, the retail sales and service, actually a restaurant use, a conditional use is required, which is approved. It doesn't come to you guys, it's approved by the Planning Commission. But in order to approve that conditional use, the plan currently designates that as neighborhood, so really for residential. And this would change it to neighborhood center, which would allow, neighborhood residential use or light commercial type use. And so this is just a change to that comprehensive plan to allow that conditional use to move forward. As you can see there, it is designated neighborhood, but given that location at Bell Street and Paint Rock, and given that there's commercial type development, across the street, across Bell Street, this particular tract is not real usable as a single family. And so it really does make sense. And as I mentioned, the zoning has already been changed to office commercial. They would have had the option to change it to something like general commercial, but that allows more intensive type commercial uses. So we thought leaving it office commercial, but then getting the conditional use would help provide some additional protection, since there's that home directly to the north and then a home across the street. That gives some additional limitations on them that will reduce the impacts on those homes. Just looking at the site there, across the street, across Bell Street, is a gas station. You can see there in the picture. So it is kind of a commercial corner, at least on that other side of the street. Just a couple more pictures across the street, across Paint Rock, and then just a different view across Bell Street. The proposed future land use does allow this proposed use, as I mentioned, and it also is that transition. By not allowing the higher intensity commercial uses, it's something that is more appropriate to be right next to a home and across the street from a home, versus the more intensive commercial that's maybe a little bit farther down the street. We did send out our notices to the surrounding property owners and did not receive any in favor or in opposition. Staff does recommend approval, as did the Planning Commission unanimously. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Harry, would you like to make any comment?
Just one thing, I've lived in that neighborhood for 35 plus years. No one is going to build a house on that particular corner because the amount of traffic that comes down Bell Street and Paint Rock Road. So I think this is a good opportunity to put something on that corner that people can use. So I personally would say that I move to approve as presented.
I'm going to ask that that motion be considered, but I also want to ask if there's any other comments from council before I take that motion. Okay, with none, then Harry's made the motion. May I have a second? There's a second by Lucy. And any public comment in regards to this item? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. We will now move into item E, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving case Z20-12, a rezoning from the single-family residence zoning district to the low-rise multifamily zoning district being .415 acres located at 2314 Carlton Way.
Thank you. As you mentioned, this is a rezoning from RS1, which only allows single-family, to RM1, which allows multifamily. The intention of this is not to build anything new, any multifamily, but the multifamily zoning does allow a daycare use by right. This is a single-family home property that has also been used as a daycare for a number of years. As part of the relicensing process through the state for the daycare, they recognize that the current zoning doesn't allow it. And so this is to clean up the zoning on the property so that the daycare isn't allowed use under our zoning.
But it is existing as a daycare, and it is going to continue as a daycare. The zoning is just not in sync with the current use.
That's correct. And she did get an approval years ago, but for a variety of reasons that approval no longer applies. And so this will just clean up the zoning on the property. Couple pictures. Again, it is just a single-family home, but that's also used as a daycare facility. This one, we also sent out our notices to the surrounding property owners, did not receive any responses in favor or in opposition. So 20 years ago, the applicant did get a special use for the daycare, but because they didn't meet all the conditions, it expired. And so had that special use not expired, they would actually be legal under our zoning. But since it did expire, it prompted the need for this. They could have come back for a special use, but the residential zoning or the multifamily zoning actually is a cleaner way to handle this particular thing. And so that's what the applicant has opted for. They do live in the home and are wanting to reestablish the daycare through this relicensing process. There is a neighborhood commercial across the street. It does retain the residential zoning. Some of the other options we looked at were going to something more like a commercial, but because it's used primarily as a residence and that's what's surrounding it, we decided the residential zoning was a better choice. It is kind of in a transition area, though, which is right close to the end, and so of course across the end is commercial and Angelo State. That does recommend approval, as did Planning Commission unanimously.
Do you have any questions or comments?
Question, I'm certainly fine with it. It's been there for so long, basically grandfathering in, so I'll make the motion to approve as presented.
There's a second. Yes, there's a second by Tommy. So is there any public comment in regards to this item? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, we will now move on to item F, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving one case CP 20-05, an amendment to the City of San Angelo Comprehensive Plan changing certain lands from neighborhood and neighborhood center to commercial on 12 acres located at 913 West 33rd Street, and 2 case Z20-11, a rezoning from the single-family residential zoning district to the general commercial zoning district on 10 acres located at 913 West 33rd Street. John?
Thank you. As you mentioned, this is changing the comprehensive plan and the zoning on parts of this property. As you'll see in a second, the front part adjacent to Bryant is already zoned commercial, but they want to develop deeper back than what's currently zoned for commercial. So you can see here, the pink is the what's currently zoned commercial, and the back part of that property is zoned for single family. I think the original intent was for this neighborhood to kind of develop all in this area, but now a new owner has purchased it and wants to develop a larger commercial use, so they need to rezone and change the plan back farther into the property. It is currently a vacant property, but there is commercial, as you can see in the area, and this whole Bryant corridor is largely this type of commercial. There are some homes, as you saw on the map, just to the north of here, but it's the way this is laid out. It's not anything that's immediately adjacent. And I think you can see it here as well. So there might be a couple of homes there that will be across from the back part of this use, and then these homes technically back up to that potential commercial use, but all of these homes are up towards the front, and those are really deep lots, and so we didn't see that as any sort of problem for this particular commercial. We did send out our notices, none in favor or in opposition. And I think I already explained most of this. So staff does recommend approval of both the rezoning and the comp plan, and the planning commission also unanimously recommended both.
It's in your area. Would you like to comment?
Have you mentioned what they were looking to establish, what they wanted to build there?
I think so. Is that public information? Yeah. Okay. I'll let the applicant speak to that. Sometimes we get information that's not considered public information yet, so I think we can answer that since he's here. I'll let him do that.
Would you like to come forward, please? You can come right here to this one here. I guess that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Bill Clark. I'm in town from Wichita Falls, Texas.
Welcome.
We were sent here to complete a Tractor Supply, a new Tractor Supply store on the north side of San Angelo, specifically on North Bryant. And
Right.
Oh, no. Any other questions? Or
Do I have questions from council? Tom, are you good?
No, that was it.
Tractor Supply.
Okay. Let's make sure we're not having a manufacturing facility
Yeah.
come in right there beside the house.
So is that a motion?
Yeah.
And a second by Lucy. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further public comment? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, John. That concludes our regular agenda for today. We will move into a closed session. The executive session and the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exceptions to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, Section 551.072, deliberations about real property regarding 1, J. Finner Survey 0001, Abstract 4985. At this point, we are going to move into closed session, and we'll be back as soon as we can. With everyone back from closed session, there are no announcements to be made following the closed session, so we will move into the follow-up and administrative issues. Consider items discussed in closed session. As I said, there are none. And then item B, consideration of approving various board nominations. And so there's one, the Airport Advisory Board, Joseph Rollo from the mayor to a first full term, and William Pritchard, SMD 6, to a second term, both ending October 2022. And the Zion and Historic Review Commission, Lenny James, SMD 3, to a second term, and Stephen McLaughlin, SMD 4, to a third term, both ending September 2022. May I have a motion to approve those?
I move to approve.
Lucy moved to approve, and Tommy has seconded that. With no one left in the audience, there must not be any public comment. So with that, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And that passes 7-0. And we are now up to item C, announcements and consideration of future agenda items. Are there any? With none, may I have a motion for adjournment?
Move we adjourn.
Motion, a second by Lane. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.